So back in virtual desktop, looking at the app that I've been working on to help manage the large ROM library. Uh, Last week I'd spent maybe a day on, or yeah, I'd spent a full day on it, and had got to where it was reading um, existing game lists and then mapping those to ROM files, and then also trying to map them to media. And then with that, I could go into Retrobat, Bat GUI, and I could map it to, I could point it to the game list. Uh, and then load up Retrobat, and then that would um, show all the systems and all the games. And it would load quickly, even though it's hosted over a network storage. So that got maybe, so out of the retro hard drives I had that said that there were like 90,000, or 90,000 games on them. I got maybe 40,000 going that technique from going from the game lists, basically game lists like this, and then mapping them to a new game list that I was writing. Uh, and then I started go like try to see like where was I missing stuff. So I had to start digging in. The big one I was missing was MAME. So I had the game list. It was just still in the ROMs, and it's just lost because there's so many files in there. I just had missed it when I was looking for it. But it's a 17 meg XML file. It's huge. That picked up maybe another 30,000 games, or maybe that got mapped and had the artwork for them. So it was getting closer to what the drives were advertising. And then I wanted to like start getting some more. So then that was kind of phase one, to go from the game list as source to generate a new game list. And phase two, I was going to go from the ROMs and the media. And so I've done that now, or through the second pass, it'll look at, so it'll go through the ROMs files. Now the problem here with the ROMs is that, especially if you get into like the PC games that have folders of files, there's just too many extensions. There's lots of files that are irrelevant. Uh, they're not, yeah, I mean, it works great when you've got these just single extensions, but when you've got a whole folder of just different extensions, you don't know what the actual extension is. So I had to take a step back. And what I did was go to Retrobat, emulation station, the dot emulation station. And the thing that I needed was es underscore systems config. So it's got a system list of systems, and these effectively equate to the folder names that Retrobat uses. But it's got the paths, and these are the default portable paths that it uses. But in Bat GUI, you can set it to something else. By default, this would have been one of these relative paths to Retrobat install. But this is what I've been overriding to point to mapped network drive. So I was aware of this file because of that, but then the other thing I knew about it is it had the extensions. So if I could read, basically what I did then is I read this file in, and I would map it to a system on my network drive. So there'll be a associated like 3DO in here, so I could map them that way. And then 3DO would say that, hey, CHD is a valid ROM format. I'm not sure. Some of them have ISOs or different file formats in here too. So then that helped me narrow down what files to look for in the ROMs directories. And so then I basically said, well, if I've got a mapping file in the ROMs that wasn't already mapped by game list, uh, go ahead and write an entry into the game list. So you wouldn't have all the metadata, but you'd have the path, and you could drive a name from the file name. Granted, you would miss, so like this one has very little, but this one has a lot. So you'd have path, name, and you'd just be missing. You could pick up media, image, thumbnail, marquee. You might have some of that. You wouldn't have publisher and release date, right? You wouldn't have any of this metadata to go along with it. That you've got to get from somewhere. But I was like, well, let's see how many of those there were. So when I did that, it went up over 100,000 uh, of just having the path and the name. I pulled back from then. I'll go ahead and show you the what that looks like. So along with that, reading that config and getting a little more info, I started just dumping out a lot more info about the system. So this one would be, let's try this one. No, that's different for. So this is a markdown of the systems, and this helps me manage it and see how I can improve the system. This is another thing I didn't like about. I wasn't going to run scraper individually on every one of these systems. I wanted to get a good holistic view of everything. And so I've got the system, I've got a count of the media, which would be images, videos, manuals. I've got the number of files, this would be ROM files or total files. The extensions would be the ROM extensions that are relevant. And then the file extensions would be the ones that are like, these are ROM files that fall into one of these extensions. And without these are the count of ROM files that don't fit that extension. Games is the number of ones that I've been able to look up from game list, an existing game list. Loose is I could not look it up from a game list. It's the count. Then L media is ones where I'm able to map. It's a loose file, but I'm able to map it to media. And no media is where I've got the ROM file only, but I also don't have any images, pictures, or videos. So instead of doing all of the ones that don't have, for those ones where I couldn't look them up by a game entry, but I still had the ROM file that looked good. I only mapped those if I also had media, because then the media would give me at least some relevant info about what the actual ROM was. I didn't like polluting it with all the ones that didn't have any media, because it was just, a raw cartridge displayed in Retrobat. I didn't that there were enough of those. I was like, I didn't like that, so I switched to where it's just I want the media, at least the artwork, to show up. But I like this a lot now, so this kind of will let me know. This one doesn't let me sort, but I've got another, I can load it in. I've got a comma separated value one where I can load it in sheets and then sort. And it'll let me know like which system I can look at to give me the most, get the most stuff brought back online and into Retrobat. So 3DO, there's like a couple hundred that I don't have in there right now. Or to bring those in, what I would need to do is I'd run scraper, and I'd have it scrape just for metadata only. Or I guess I'd have it scrape, but I'd have it like I'd probably just have it scraped and get the metadata only, and then I'd try to see if I could map it to any of my existing metadata or media, or I just run scraper to just for these systems I really needed to that give me more games brought in. So Archimedes pretty much has nothing. So this one would need to be scraped entirely, but it's not huge, so that's fine. But you can see that most of them don't have large numbers. Well, karaoke, but this would be, I think it's MP3 and CDG files. So that one I wouldn't scrape. MAME. So this is the one that was brought in the most. So I think it was, I can't see my columns. So MAME. Yeah, so I ended up mapping about 40,000. 3,000 are unmapped, 68 with media, almost 3,000 without media. So I could try to go and pick those up. Granted, I think 40,000 is plenty. I'm not going to tackle that one. So most everything had, I could pick up most everything from game lists, and then I was able to pick up a number more from just a loose ROM with media. So these counts of ones that don't have uh, just a loose ROM with no media, they're relatively low. So I'm not missing a lot from this technique that I've been trying. Now that said, that's for like what I'm calling like the arcade and console systems. Pinball, I get pretty good coverage too. Now PC, I have the media coverage there is there's bigger gaps in the PC, um, such as Technoparrot and I think Mugen is the other big one that has a lot of stuff. Those those in general, I guess like ScumVM too. Those are tougher because they have um, folders, which I haven't dealt with yet. So let's see, Mugen. Yeah, so folders. So I would basically, I'm ignoring I'm only looking for files right now for matching. I'm not using directories to match, but I would need to use directories to match, and I'd probably pick up a lot of these. Technoparrot, I think, is the same. Yeah. And ScumVM. Well, it's got zips. No, not that one. I think I probably zipped the ScumVMs though, and I'm guessing that it's yeah, I don't know how many of those I've actually mapped, but I know the big ones are Mugen and Technoparrot right here for out of the ones I'm considering more PC-like. I just haven't really dealt with these yet, which will bring in more. Uh, what do we have though? The the other part that I was doing though was uh, looking at the configs. So if I'm reading that config file. So this is a dump of, well, it has a config entry, but I don't have an associated folder. So I might try to go and figure out like what some of these are. Like I'd have no idea what this 2ship2 Harkinian is. Aquarius I don't have. Benu GD, I don't know what these are. So these are all kind of like, well, I might go look what these systems are. Uh, Casio Loopy, I do have this one. It just doesn't match on. I gotta make the naming. I think I have my folder name is matching Loopy, and this config is done based off of CAS Loopy. I think is what's happening there. So that's another one that I could look at then later on is try to go and fill in some more of these systems that I just don't have anything for right now. Anything else? I did do a count of, no, not that one. See, I'm always looking for the extensions that I trust less. And so this is kind of highlighting the systems that have executables and such. Game. All right, so then the at that point, then I still had a bunch of systems, but then I was running into where uh, the ROM collections don't map one to one to Retrobat. So, example would be TurboGrafx. So, TurboGrafx 16 and CD have separate folders from the ROM collections. They had this, but for Retrobat, they want PC Engine and PC Engine CD. And then the ROM collections were split for mine, where the European and Japanese ROMs are in here, and the US based ones are in TurboGrafx. I think the other one was Genesis was US, and is that Master System? Could be wrong. I think so. I've had splits between these, and then also the Mega CD, and then I believe I've also got the Sega CD. No, I don't have the Sega. I got Sega's TV, whatever that is. But that's where when some of the systems are just not mapped. The example there, another one would be FBA, which I believe may be a famicom system. I'm not entirely sure, but or this one isn't this collection, so I haven't been merging those collections yet. I wanted to see like, well, what if I wanted to keep them separate and have them show up separately in Retrobat? So what I've been doing now, and since I started parsing that config file from Retrobat, the ES systems config, the other thing to look at is in Retrobat in this emulation station settings as well. This is like the not that one, sorry, this one, ES systems. This the large file. So this is the one that has all like the system settings. It's like the defaults here. And then as you go in and change those, they spit out smaller ones. And these smaller ones are just, it's the system list, but with only a single system. So in this case, it's the 3DO, and whatever settings you've made. So for me, I was pointing it to my network storage, and otherwise it's the exact same as what's in the ES systems, the source, ES underscore systems config. So I was seeing these all, like when I start out, I didn't have any of these, but these were getting created as I was adding more systems by mapping their network drive. So then I was like, well, I was having to go through this list and just add, and it was getting annoying just to go back and forth just to add this file. It's like, well, why don't I just do that myself? So I don't use BatGUI anymore. So what's happening now is when I did that initial read of the the parent ES underscore systems.config with the defaults, I would basically just write that file. I'd read the system that mapped, and I would write it into the system file, the system directory, the same place where I'd keep at the root where I'd keep the game list XML. And so this is that same file we just looked at that's in the Retrobat emulation station settings. But what I do now is when I write it, I also go ahead and point it to the network path. And then I deploy it as well. So now when it runs, it'll also copy it over here. And so I don't have to do BatGUI anymore. I just start Retrobat and all these systems will now show up. The part that was interesting though is you can add systems that are not a part of es_systems.config. So for my example of TurboGrafx, I couldn't look these up in es_systems.config. They did not exist. But what I did is I just went and copied the ones from the PC Engine and PC Engine CD and just modified them. And so now I have the entries for TurboGrafx. And the part that I wasn't sure about is as when I copied it over to Retrobat, sure enough, these show up in Retrobat now as systems. So like these do get artwork with them, I think because of the theme or the platform. But it also worked too because it'll use the same emulators as PC Engine CD. So this lets me split some stuff. So the FBA system that I mentioned earlier, which I think is NES based, is I would just go and grab the NES config, modify it, and then the FBA stuff would be kept separate. I'm not sure if I'm going to do that or not. And I might end up combining these anyways. I may combine TurboGrafx and the PC Engine as well. The other thing that it also worked for Bat GUI though. So like Bat GUI initially started out with like 242 systems. This appears to read those additional configs as well. Though it doesn't just go off of the es_systems.config. So maybe if we watch this to the end, I don't know how long it takes. There's a lot way more ROMs now, so it may just be too long. Come on, last push. I was hoping we'd see if it read any more files, but I've added at least I think 12 more that aren't part of es_systems.config, and that's why this count has gotten larger as I've added more systems, just for the smaller config files, which I really like that flexibility. So I think this is not missing config. No, I'm not going to dig into any more of those. Let's look at it now. Let's look at the system. So still loads super fast. I had to switch themes. I was using the tile theme earlier, and at some point I added a system that it did not support, and everything's slowed to a crawl. And around in that same directory of the es_systems.config, I could read the emulation station log. I was complaining about certain systems, and that just seemed to be that they weren't mapped correctly in the theme. That tiled theme hadn't been updated in a while. I tried to update the theme. It didn't work, but I ended up switching themes, and pretty much the other themes I tried all worked fine. But let's go ahead and get it in. So now I've mapped the media, it's done a lot better. I've got a lot more video. If we look at what we're talking about, so there's a lot more systems now. So here will be the example of TurboGrafx, but it's saying PC Engine. This is the first one. It's getting a TurboGrafx, so this is mainly Japanese and European games, or ROMs. And then down below, I should have here's this one's the one I've made custom based off the PC Engine config. And it's all USB. I'll probably merge these, but I wanted to just see that. I was just seeing. Is there anyone in here that doesn't have a graphic? Oh yeah, so music videos. This one doesn't have. It's another custom thing. The I talked about. I think the what was it called? The one where somebody's trying to add in basically some of the best for each system in Retrobat, which I think is a very interesting concept. So they added music videos into it, and I set that up, but that one didn't get a graphic. I think they do provide the graphics. I just didn't. I didn't copy those. I might go back and get those later. Like so, here's another one. WiiWare. This was ROMZO, but so I do have the graphics and the media for them, but I didn't get the WiiWare system. But on this one, I'm assuming I would just I could probably just map it to the Wii for the graphics and it'd still show the WiiWare text over it. But now let's go down to all, just get a sampling. So just kind of fbneo, television. What's this? Open bore, get the video. Let's get past fbneo. So let's just scroll down real quick and get something. SNES. So no video for this one. 1942. Just kind of quick sampling. So most everything has a graphic now. Most everything has a video. And now it's showing 93, almost 94,000 games. So it's definitely been a nifty little tool to deal with just a ridiculous collection and just slowly refining it and getting it to pick up more stuff that's still being dropped. Anyways, that's all.